we had great success with this. And I'm going to walk you through, just very quickly, what exactly privacy by design is, and you'll see that these 7 foundational principles are intended simply to form the base, the foundation of the program, and the program can take 100 different directions. I've talked a lot about preventing the privacy harms from arising. It's very much a preventative model, and I haven't talked to you about the default setting yet, which I did point out is in the new EU General Data Protection Regulation. That is the highest bar, and perhaps the most difficult one to accomplish, but it gives you the highest level of privacy. When you look at privacy as the default setting, it means that you're not expecting the individual, the data subject, the customer, the citizen, to scour through the terms of service and the privacy policy and all the legalese to find out where they can opt out of additional uses of their information, where they can say, I want privacy. In this day and age, we know no one does that. Even I don't do that anymore. It's just too time-consuming. It's not meaningful. But that doesn't mean that people don't want privacy. I'll show you some surveys that have come out that show people increasingly want more and more privacy. Privacy is the default. It means that you, as a government entity, can say to citizens, we totally respect your privacy. We don't expect you to figure out how to get it. We're going to offer it to you. We are bringing you privacy assurance built into the program as the default. It means that you don't have to ask for privacy. It is automatically delivered to you within the program involved. I can't tell you how much people love this. In a business context, it delivers such a competitive advantage because it builds trust, which is sorely lacking in this day and age. And so if you can say to people, we're giving you privacy assurance from the get-go, you don't have to ask for it, it's built in, they will be so grateful to you. And they will thank you with business contact, repeat business, and it attracts new opportunity. Within a government context, it builds trust and confidence, which is so sorely lacking these days. So that's why privacy is the default setting is so important and completely lacking in, for example, the Internet of Things, which I'll get to in a moment. Embedded in design, I think, speaks for itself. It's an essential component of the design of the program. Then it will be operating without anyone having to add something on afterwards. I've talked a lot about full functionality, but it is critical. And I've been doing this work for a long time. Whenever I talk to groups, by the end of the talk, I always have their buy-in in terms of they understand why positive sum is so important to achieve. But I'm an N of one. I speak to lots of people, but it's not enough. The prevailing view out there, and you will hear this, especially after terrorist incidents. Think of Charlie Hebdo in Paris, San Bernardino, Brussels more recently. When you hear people talk about it, law enforcement, intelligence agencies, they always say, look, okay, you got to give up on privacy. I mean, we have to have public safety, right? Of course we have to have public safety, but you can do both, and that's what I hope to show you later. You can do both. You do not have to give up on privacy or give up on freedom. That's what you need to reject. Let me speak for a moment about security. While the term privacy subsumes a much broader set of protections than security alone, if you don't have strong security from end to end with full lifecycle protection, including secure destruction of the data, you're not going to have any privacy. In this day and age of cyber attacks, almost on a daily basis, you have to have a very strong foundation of strong security. Visibility and transparency, keeping it open, I can't emphasize how important this is, and keeping it user-centered. I always remind anyone, both governments and businesses, it's not your data. You may have custody and control over someone's data, but the data, they do not belong to you. They belong to the data subject, to the individual. And that's why they have not only right of access to that data, it's incumbent upon you to tell them how you're going to use the data. That's why transparency is so important. People are in the best position to also know if there are problems in terms of the accuracy of the data that you won't know. I've had this experience many times in terms of my health data, which I always get a copy of after every intervention. Sometimes there's mistakes on it that others wouldn't be aware of, the doctors, that only Obviously, no, because it's about me. And it's really important to keep that data as accurate as possible. So there's benefits to agencies as well as to the individuals in terms of openness and transparency and keeping it focused on the user. It becomes much more of a win-win proposition. And just in case you think that this might be interesting, that it's pie in the sky here at the construct, let me correct that. We have operationalized privacy by design in many, many different ways. We partnered with all the large companies you can think of: Microsoft, Intel, IBM, HP, Oracle. We did papers with them, over 20 papers that are condensed in this report, to show that this is eminently doable. I wanted to demonstrate that there is not only a possibility, it's a reality, and that companies benefit from doing it, which is why we partner with companies in all these different areas. And recently, I was asked, a company we visited, and the CEO of the company said, do you do privacy by design certification? We'd like to get some of our services certified. At that time, I hadn't thought of doing it yet. I had just joined Ryerson last year. But I never say no to anything. It sounds like a good idea. So I said, leave it with me. Let me see what we can do. So I went back to my office, and I don't have the staff I had before when I was commissioner. So I knew we couldn't do this in-house. So I thought, who can I partner with who can look under the hood, if you will, do the audit and attestation that is required to be able to certify a product or service. And so I thought of Deloitte. I worked with Deloitte for many years when I was commissioner, and they're fabulous. They get privacy by design. They understand you have to proactively embed it. And so they kindly agreed, and we launched our privacy by design certification program. And we just completed our first certification about a month ago. So I'm very excited about this. And I think it's going to really have legs. We've had a lot of interest shown in it, and a number of other certifications are underway. The other thing I was asked to do recently, which I just completed, if you have any interest in it, as I said, privacy by design is global. So people wanted an online course on privacy by design that could be taken remotely, of course. So I just completed the 12th lecture for a new privacy by design online course, and it's going to be offered in the fall, if any of you have any interest in it. We've had a lot of positives about privacy by design from the engineering and tech fields, which is so important. The Internet Engineering Task Force gave us a very positive comment a few years ago about how important privacy by design was and how we should study it in a more systemic way. I've been working with Professor Don Jutla, an engineering professor, on an OASIS technical committee for privacy by design software. And we're just developing this for software engineers, this technical committee, to just offer whatever assistance we can to people in tech in terms of exactly how do you do this. It's trying to develop a privacy by design playbook, if you will, for software engineers. And we just finished our first version of it, 1.0. We're getting comments, and now we're working on the next draft. I'm telling you all this because I want you to know that this is very real. We did a couple of papers with Oracle, experts in security, on privacy and security by design. Again, the importance of privacy and security, I can't emphasize that enough. Because in this day and age, of course, you have to have strong security. And we wanted to show how you can have that and privacy. There are some essential technical tools for protecting privacy online. We're going to talk about encryption a little later on. Encryption is your strongest tool in terms of ensuring that the data are protected while they're in transmission, while they're in your possession. Coding the data, which is essentially what encryption is, offers such strengths to both the creators of the data and users that you're sharing it with. Other tools such as de-identification, I can't emphasize that enough. You may have heard that, well, there have been a couple of instances where data have been successfully re-identified. And the people who have done the re-identification have said, look, you can never completely de-identify data, so don't bother, we're going to be able to de-identify it. To that I say nonsense. If you use strong de-identification protocols combined with the risk of re-identification framework, you can reduce the risk of re-identification to less than 0.01%. That's comparable to the likelihood of being hit by lightning if you go out in a rainstorm, and I think most people think that's an acceptable risk and hazard to go out. The point is, there is no, later on we're talking about the myth of zero risk. There is no zero risk anywhere. Not in encryption, not in, you send your child outside and tell them to look both ways and pray that they'll be safe. Things happen, accidents happen. You try to minimize that as much as possible. But you don't just say no to the entire field. Because when you look at health research and a number of other research and insights that are available through data analytics, they need access to data. So just saying no to making the data available leads to one of two conclusions. It either leads to no research happening, which is completely unacceptable, and everyone rails against that, or people then just say, just use the data in its identifiable form. We have to have research, forget about this privacy thing. I just read an article about that, again, a little while ago. No, you don't want to do that either. You put the time in, make the effort, and you can strongly de-identify data, minimizing re-identification likelihood dramatically. That has to be the goal. Anonymization, when you think of data minimization, it's removing the personal identifiers from the data so that the data are truly anonymized, and thereby you enable the use of that data for additional purposes. And design thinking. I want to just spend a few minutes talking about design thinking, which is all about how do we embed these measures into design. Very similar to privacy by design, although the professor came up with this, Professor Woodrow Hartsock at Stanford. I met him recently, and I love his thinking. He said design is often overlooked by users and regulators because it's not a panacea. Remember, there's no zero risk, there's no panacea. While design is no cure-all, it can be more effective than laws, terms of service, or organizational policies because design affects every user. So Professor Hartsock makes a very compelling case that embedding the necessary measures into design will give you the best return. Let's give up on this, will it do everything mindset, which is crazy, and focus on what can we do. And he talks about the importance of companies providing innovative design solutions to privacy problems. Because he said we should block at designs that reflect carelessness with our personal information, reputation, and relationships. So he actually makes, and a number of regulators, commissioners are now going in this direction, that if you are careless in terms of not embedding privacy into design, that will be an issue increasingly that regulators are looking at as a flaw. And I know that the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, Daniel Taban, is looking at privacy by design in the consultation he's now completing on PbD and modernizing the Act and what additional measures should be introduced into that. And he's included privacy by design as one of those measures because increasingly this becomes so important to ensure that it's not an oversight. It's not something you think about after the fact. You embed it and make it an essential part of the equation. And this can happen increasingly. I like his term of design thinking because then it invokes the model